Okay, so as I make this video, I uploaded the very first one. Omega was inspired by the Mechagodzilla, and then I started talking about kind of like its own origins. And I actually thought about something else that actually makes very interesting sense. Now, this is going to sound kind of ludicrous, and maybe it's still just a theory, but at the same time, though, I do feel like there is a lot of connection between the two, and you're going to see what I mean. But before we go into this, I want to make one thing perfectly clear. Omega was, according to the Kapu monster updates back in the day, Omega was drawn as number 20, where index number 21 came up. I'd have to double check. But apparently Omega was pushed back a little bit. So who knows what Pokemon, I forget exactly which one they added in between. It might have been before. So anyways, this is where it gets interesting. So Omega actually shares the same battle cry as Blastoise. Again, the same Blastoise you're thinking of when you think of the one that we got in the final evolution. However, this was not always the case, though. Blastoise was originally part of a different shellfish Pokemon. There was actually a scrap Pokemon called Blastoise that would eventually evolve into Blastoise. However, due to cartridge limitations, there was another evolved form that Blastoise or Wartortle would evolve into. That Pokemon was scrapped. Blastoise was probably more considered. And I also want to say that even though Blastoise is not an electric type, what I'm about to say, this is where it gets interesting. Blastoise was inspired by Mechagodzilla, sort of. And I can sort of prove this. See, when you really think about, or at least where Blastoise got its cannons from, its guns, it was supposed to come off as like a mech, sort of. Because what turtle can you think of that has cannons and guns and on its back that shoots and sprays water? You know, it's just kind of something they added. Seems really cool. So, even though Blastoise is not a machine type, and I know I'm thinking of Yu-Gi-Oh!, but Blastoise is not a steel, it's not a fighting, it's not any of those things. It's not a rock type, it's not a ground type, you know, it's not something that, again, it's not a steel type, it's not a machine, you know, but at the same time, though, and you think about this, really think about this, you know, that's where they got the concept for it, was from machines, you know. So what I think is really interesting is Blastoise was actually drawn as number 30 in the concept art for the Kapu monsters. So Blastoise was there from the very beginning, and rightfully so. But what I'm thinking they decided, see, this was, okay, so this is what they originally wanted to do. Before they found out with all the capsule, you know, the cartridge limitations and having to rewrite everything. This is what I think happened. I think that at the time, Omega was supposed to be in the game. Omega was supposed to be, again, guarding the Silph Co. and something to do with Techno Jack, which is, again, somebody you would obtain the card key from. So what happened was they decided that, and then you would also encounter, like, you know, because Blastoise wouldn't have been a starter at this point. So you could probably catch you could technically get as many Blastoise as you want. It wasn't just a Pokemon you had to breed, or, you know what I mean. You could just basically catch as many Blastoise and evolve it into Blastoise. Blastoise would have been a very strong Pokemon late in the game, you know. But let's think about this for a second, though. So Blastoise is a shellfish Pokemon, and that would make sense. But at the same time, though, they took the concept that Blastoise could have been based on, like, some, you know, like, again, like, I forget what the word is, starts with a Z, like certain beasts, like in the, like, sort of like Mechagodzilla and like Ultraman 7 style, because, again, you have to understand that's where a lot of these ideas came from, where, like, those old monster movies in Japan and all that, not just horror, but, you know, just, you know, superheroes and all that. Those old monster movies where they would destroy Tokyo and save it at the same time, or maybe it's on a whole different planet, you know, and all these cool things they did back in the day. And I think that's where they got the concept, because this is where it kind of gets a little confusing. So Blastoise okay, from what we understand, we were told in the very, very final version that War Turtle evolves into Blastoise. But some people have always speculated that maybe that wasn't always the case because War Turtle does not look like Blastoise. Now, some people also wrote the idea off that Blastoise, when a Pokemon evolves, it could just very well look different because it evolved. Evolution's not always similar. This is true. Things can definitely change over time. Blastoise is still a very old Pokemon and can very well still look different. As well, it gets its own, it can be very powerful and hard to destroy very easily due to physical defense. So I mean, even Venusaur can, if not trained right, can have trouble taking on a Blastoise in one hit, rather. And that's before you even consider using Solar Beam as unless you use the Sunny Day Solar Beam combo, that would kill Venusaur. That would kill Blastoise very easily, but but here's what's really interesting about Blastoise, though. I want to say that what they did was they voted on wanting to keep Blastoise, so they scrapped War Turtle's evolution, but they also scrapped Omega's evolution. But because Omega had like a cool concept art, they wanted to. Maybe that's where they also kind of gave Blastoise the idea, was Omega might have inspired Blastoise as well, because of the cannons on its back. Now, Omega doesn't have cannons, but if you compare the stances and you compare the battle cries, because they use the same one, they are sort of like, they're inspired in a way they kind of look the same, sort of. Like Omega kind of looks like it has Blastoise's like features and all that, but it's like it's like they use the same base design, but they added more details to it, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't be surprised that maybe because they were scrapping Omega, they decided to like rewrite it into Blastoise a little bit. And again, just look at the images and tell me that, I mean, even though they are two different ideas and they were going to use both ideas, but because they had to take one or the other, and mind you, Mew was the one that replaced Omega, so it wasn't Blastoise. But I'm thinking that that's probably what happened, though, was they at least had one Pokemon that they were using, that they were like, okay, so even though Omega's getting cut, they could, Blastoise could have been where it got its guns at for the cannons on its back. So Blastoise can sort of be related to like a Mecha Godzilla. In a way, it's a turtle that's a machine, basically, sort of. It's kind of weird. It kind of reminds me of Catapult Turtle from Yu-Gi-Oh, sort of, or Launcher Spider. Just because the concept is it had guns on its back, or it was a machine, basically, is the idea. So I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe that's where they got the idea for it. It's very possible. Maybe not. Maybe it's based on another Pokemon entirely. But it just goes to show you, like, you could have like two different concept arts that could have been inspired by so many different things. Even in Pokemon. Again, Pokemon was a series that was based on so many other things from other series. And when you look at what Satoshi Tajiri came out with, you look at this and you're like, wow, man. Like, there's a lot of ideas they had. Even ideas that I didn't even think they'd have, like from like Sailor Moon, and again, just to name a few. But it's Sailor Moon and like some of the old Pokemon could have been like from like Super Mario. Some of the other Pokemon that were scrapped could have been from like Pocky and Rocky. Like no joke, it's nuts how many different references. Dragon Ball Z. Who else? Satoshi Tajiri really took a lot of inspiration from like Dragon Age 2, again Dragon Warrior, Dragon Age, Dragon Quest, whatever you want to call it, but another great series. I've played every single one of those games, and let me tell you something, I can totally see why a lot of people in Japan were like excited about that series. And that's another thing, even Dragon Age was inspired by Akira Toriyama, the guy who wrote Dragon Ball Z and all of its sagas, So it's like one idea inspires another idea, and then we go full circle. It's just nuts. But it's cool how so many people manage to be inspired by that art design. So again, if I find any more concept arts, I'll tell you about it. But as of right now, subscribe, please, if you haven't. And, you know, what do you guys think about all this? I do think that even though Blastoise is a water type, it does look like it could have been more than a water type at one point.